Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Balancing Act Parenting with CF session. My name is Nicole Kowal. I'm a 36-year-old CFer who lives in Buffalo, New York, with my husband, Michael, our 3-year-old little boy, a lot of barn cats, and a dog. And I will be moderating tonight's session. We'll be introducing our speakers in just a moment. But before I do, I want to provide a few housekeeping items. The session is being recorded and will be available to all registrants after the event on the CF Foundation's YouTube channel. Under the Stage tab on the right side of your screen, you'll notice the chat for everyone who is in this session. If you are in the Event tab chat, that is for the full event and not specific to this session. We will be taking audience questions during the session. We encourage you to submit your questions anytime into the chat box. If you are having any IT issues today, please visit the help desk located in the Expo tab on the left-hand side. We also have counselors on call today, so if at any point you feel overwhelmed by the conversation, you can visit the help desk to reconnect with a counselor. We also want to remind everyone for our event conduct guide, please be considerate, open-minded, and respectful, and keep all the discussions confidential. We also ask that you use your real identity and do not use malicious or offensive speech. If you feel the event conduct guide has been violated, please contact a CF Foundation staff member in the help desk. Lastly, this panel is not intended to be substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment recommendations. Now, let's get started. I'd like to begin by allowing our speakers to introduce themselves. Chad, let's start with you.
Hey, good morning, afternoon, actually good evening, everybody. My name is Chad Bautch. I am married to my wife of almost 28 years, Heidi. Together, we have 3 kids, Carter, who's 21, and is a senior down at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And we have boy-girl twin 14-year-olds, Landon and Millie, and they are in the 8th grade. My CF journey started when I was diagnosed at 3 years old. My pediatrician actually diagnosed me and then sent me to the CF clinic in Omaha to be confirmed. Then I received a double lung transplant at the University of Minnesota in 2016. Since that transplant, I've also got to deal with the fun of CF-related diabetes. I currently work at the Boys Town National Hotline, where we specialize in helping kids, teens, and parents who are in crisis. Now, I would like to introduce Annette and have her tell you a little bit about herself. Annette?
Hello, everyone. My name is Annette. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I was diagnosed with CF at age 3, and I am now 39. I am currently on a modified regimen of Symdeko, and I have CF-related diabetes and hypertension. I work from home as a freelance designer, author, and creative consultant. I am married with an 8-year-old daughter, and I'm a caretaker for an elderly relative. It is definitely a balancing act, and it can seem like an understatement when it comes to navigating this with a chronic condition, parenthood, and day-to-day living. So I'm so excited to be here and share and hear from my peers on this subject. Carolyn, please let everyone know all about you.
Hi, good morning. It's not morning, it's evening, almost nighttime. I'm so excited to be part of this panel and to share my journey with raising a family while also having CF. So sometimes I can't even believe I have children, because when I was diagnosed at the age of 4 in 1977, the average lifespan was about 15 years old. I turned 50 this past September, so a big milestone for me. My name is Carolyn Ottke-Moore. Yes, I have CF-related diabetes, CF-related arthritis. I also navigate life with depression, anxiety, and ADHD. So my baseline FEV1 is 35%, and I'm currently being evaluated for a lung transplant. However, since I've been able to take Trikafta, my lung function's not declined. So I'm hoping to keep these lungs for quite a few more years. So that's kind of the medical side of me. I'm also much more than that. I've been an educator for 25 plus years. I have my master's in counseling. I've been a therapist, a counselor, a counseling professor at the university. And I'm currently the Montessori Assistant Director at Summit Country Day in Cincinnati, Ohio. I love my profession. But the most important thing for me is I have a partner, my husband, Robert, and I'm a mother to 4 kind and beautiful children. Sophie is 16. Like Chad, I have 14-year-old twins, but they're boys, Colin and Gabriel. And my youngest son is Rowan, who just turned 11. I just want to say, meeting everyone on this panel has been awesome, because I've never spoken to another parent who has CF. So it's been great to get to know them. And I'm super excited to share our stories and learn more from you out in our CF community. So we are pioneers in this space and part of the new reality of CF. So it's just exciting to be part of all of this together. So I can't wait to learn more and how we manage being a CF parent with CF. So Nicole, I will turn that over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you all so much, Chad, Annette, and Carolyn, for sitting in on this panel and being willing to share your parenting journeys. I know it can be a little rough. Starting a family is a super personal decision, and everyone has a different journey to get us there. I'd love for us to spend the first few minutes walking through what that decision looked like for each of us. What were some of the items top of minds when thinking about the decision of having a child while also having CF? I can start off by sharing a little bit about my own. My husband and I tried for about 7 years. We were married in 2016. And during those times of not having anyone, not being blessed with a little miracle child, I decided to go down the road of animals. At one point, we had 17 rats, 7 guinea pigs, 3 turtles, 3 tortoises, 6 dogs, 2 cats, and I decided to have my sister and her niece move in with us as well. That was enough. But during all of that, I also had a DNC, ablation, hysteroscopy, and polyp removal to try and get pregnant and was not lucky enough. We gave up, figured adoption here in Buffalo was not exactly going well. A lot of the agencies said because of me being open and having cystic fibrosis, the terminal illness does put a damper on adopting here. Surrogacy was not also allowed just yet. So there goes the surrogacy avenue. And we basically just waved the white flag saying, it isn't for us right now. Let's just buy a 1-bedroom house and not care about rooms as long as there's 2 bathrooms, CF stomach. It was hard to finally own that aspect in giving up. I did start Trikafta in November of 2019 after we bought our 1-bedroom house in August of 2019. And during a pandemic, while being isolated at home, we found out we were pregnant. What a shock. 22 pregnancy tests later. And yep, definitely a little boy. He's coming. And he was perfectly healthy. He was great. He came 2.5 weeks early, weighing in at 8 pounds, 4 ounces, and 21 inches long. And that is our Ernie. But it was a little different during COVID. My husband was not able to come with me, I should say, to any doctor's appointments. I wasn't able to record anything. And I was not able to hug any of my family members during the congratulatory, announcements. So it was a little different during that. But Annette, what about you?
Well, for me, I was out of state during New Year's. I was very, very sick, and I could not figure out why. When I got back home, I went to the doctor and found out I was pregnant. And very similarly, we had given up as well because it was just, one turn after the next that just, things just didn't work out for us. We had difficulty conceiving. And then to get this awesome news, I was just overjoyed. I called everyone within like 2 days. I was in no clear hurry to drastically change my lifestyle. I was still doing martial arts, working. I had a bunch of plans for the year. Already had my schedule kind of full. Everything just about came to a halt after learning that, yeah, we were expecting, but we have a lot of other things to expect. We had to have conversations about genetics. Me and my husband, it went from being joyful to just being worrisome because we knew this is a high-risk pregnancy and we were going to have some hurdles. We hired a doula, which really helped us navigate the journey and educate us about how to be advocates for ourselves and the unborn child. It was clear we needed all hands on deck. I enlisted the whole family and my friends for support to help things come together and transition my house. At the time, I didn't foresee myself being hospitalized around 7 months because of the complications of the preeclampsia and the gestational diabetes. Things just started becoming like a downward spiral with my lungs. So I was forced to stay in the hospital pretty early, much more earlier than I expected. And we just had to have some really more tough conversations about inducing labor, terminating the pregnancy. It was just a very scary time for everyone. And it was very overwhelming emotionally. After wanting to have a child for so long and just grow my family for so bad, I could not think about losing my baby. But I'm sure my family and my husband, of course, didn't want to lose me either. I ended up staying in the hospital for over a month. Frustrating as hell because, this is the time we think we can just kind of gorge like crazy, don't care what we look like, and just have this, blissful experience. But wasn't the case because I got a diabetes diet plan and it was just disrespectful. That was not feeding us. And then I was getting awoken all times of the day and night just to keep checking this and checking that. And it seemed just like every doctor that came in, it was just something else, keeping me on the edge of my seat, getting not the best news about how things are progressing. But, at 32 weeks, my daughter came. She was great, feisty. She stayed in the NICU for a few weeks, but she was good. She's now 8, and my body seemed to just bounce right back after that. And my village really came through. I had the support I needed. I got to really take my time recovering. And without them, my physical and mental health would not be as good as it is now. That journey was something. Carolyn, I am so excited to hear about yours.
Yeah. Annette, that sounds like it was a very trying time. But the thing that I love is I think I hear your daughter in the background. So that's like awesome. My experience was somewhat similar in a lot of ways. For me, choosing to be a parent was a huge decision. It's something that I had always wanted to do. I was the second oldest of 21 cousins. And so I was just surrounded by children all the time. I was the default babysitter, all of those things. So that's part of just what I knew and loved. But, as I grew and I stayed healthy, found a fantastic partner, the potential of having children became more real, which was both nerve-wracking and exciting. Sometimes I can overthink things, but also this was such a huge decision for us that I wanted to make sure we were moving into it with our eyes open. So, we had questions like, was my husband a CF carrier? Would my body be able to handle a pregnancy? Was navigating a high-risk pregnancy worth it? Could I provide the love and care a child needs while also demanding, managing the demands of CF? And the other, big question about is what would happen if if I died when my kids were young? So all of those things are weighing on top of just the basic decisions for me about like, what's my identity going to look like? What does society say a parent should, a mom shouldn't do? How will my career change? And really, would I have the capacity to be responsible for another human being? Like, I still wonder if that is something I can handle, but you do it day in and day out. So, we really thought about this, and we thought, let's just keep going and see what happens. So we talked to my doctors, and just to make sure that my health was stable. My husband was tested to see if he was a carrier, which he was not. So we were ready to get pregnant until, like Nicole and Annette, we ran into infertility issues. We tried for 3 years and we explored adoption, but that was not the route that would work for us. It was very emotional. I was angry and grieving. You get to a point, you're like, I'm ready to go. And then you just felt like you were running into a brick wall after brick wall. And it was really stressful on our marriage, and it tested us, because the dream of having a child seemed like it might just slip away. Also, like Nicole and Annette, we had kind of thought, well, maybe God or biology or the universe is saying, maybe it's not the right thing for you to have a baby. And so we were kind of taking a break until I learned that my sister was pregnant. She got pregnant very easily, and I just broke down in the middle of an airport. I remember it like it's a movie. And that's when I realized we needed to try to take more steps to get to motherhood. Fortunately for us, we did artificial insemination. I got pregnant the first time. We tried, which was awesome. And 4 years later, after we started trying Sophie, my daughter was born. And the joy of welcoming her healed a lot of the challenges that we had through that process. And fortunately for me, Sophie was a very, very easy baby, even tempered, flexible. People were like, don't have any more. She's perfect. But I was like, oh no, I'm really good at this. I'm gonna try for a second. And my health stayed stable, right? So, and the other part too for us was I really felt strongly that I wanted Sophie to have a sibling. And just because it felt important to me that she would have a partner to navigate, and that there was a family that would surround her in case something didn't go well in life. So we went back to our doctors, the CF doctors, to discuss a second baby. They were a lot more cautious this time. But with their blessing, we did complete 2 more rounds of IUI, and I got pregnant a second time. So I remember my first ultrasound feeling super excited with my second pregnancy, hoping for a boy since I had had a girl. And all of a sudden, my doctor says, it's twins. And my heart rate hit the roof. And the first thing I thought of is, oh my God, my CF doctors are going to kill me. Like, this is not going to go well. But, you take that leap of faith. And so it changed our lives. We moved at that point from Denver back to Cincinnati, where my family was. We just definitely knew we needed some more support. So the twins arrived 5 weeks early. It was my husband's first day at his new job in Cincinnati. So we came in with a bang, and they were so tiny and so different from their sister. We still call them our adventure story. So the smiley, even tempered just kind of went out the window with those boys.
It's a boy thing.
It is a boy thing, I think. So at this time I was a stay-at-home mom. One of the things that really hit me after the twins pregnancy is I had serious postpartum depression. And that impacted, it was one of those things too, where we weren't exactly aware of what it was. And so my lungs decreased, my motivation decreased, everything. But thankfully I had the support of my parents and my husband. And we really dug deep and kind of worked through that, and I got healthier. So when the twins were 2.5, we got rid of all of our baby items because we were definitely done. We took steps to prevent pregnancy, which we hadn't done for 10 years. And I was ready to go back to work. And then we got a huge curveball, and surprise baby number 4. Nicole, I remember taking multiple pregnancy tests because,
It was like a small loan to take multiple tests.
Exactly. And, we were excited, there's anxiety, there's joy. And the doctors were very, very concerned at this point, especially because my lung function had decreased after the twins. And we did have to deal with an uninformed high-risk OB who recommended that we end the pregnancy, which was something that I could not face. So fortunately, my CF doctors and nurses reassured me that my lungs were healthy enough to get through the pregnancy, with help. And I had to have IV antibiotics through all of that. But, we embraced the journey and, believing that love will kind of navigate us through. And Rowan, our son, was born healthy and happy on New Year's Eve, 2013. So we now had 4 children under 5. So if nothing else, my journey about trying to become a parent is that children arrive when they're supposed to. And as much planning and control and organizing that we try to do, just like life with CF, it's full of surprises, and it really requires a lot of faith and flexibility. So, Chad, I'm really curious to hear your story as the only male on the panel, because I'm sure coming to fatherhood was different for you than from Annette and Nicole and I.
As I was listening to you guys go, I was like, man, you guys went through a lot to have those kids. Mine was really easy compared to all that. So my marriage and baby started really back when I started dating my wife, because as we all know, as males with CF, the likelihood of us having kids the fun way is really small, if not non-existent. So we had that conversation. She was okay with that. She kind of, the love she had for me was enough, I guess, at the time. I didn't necessarily believe that, because we ended up getting a dog first because we wanted to have something to care for. And then after about I don't know, about 4.5 years, we decided that we kind of wanted to try to have kids. So again, genetic tested Heidi. She's not a carrier. So we did all the preparation work for everything. She actually changed jobs so she could find a job that had health insurance that would cover IVF treatments. One employer in the state of Nebraska, which was the state of Nebraska at the time, their insurance covers IVF. So she got a job working for the state in human relations and like working with low income people. We were one of the luckiest people, I think, because our very first IVF try, we got pregnant just like that. First one, Carter was born. Like I said, he's 21 now. He's a senior. But as Carter started getting older, we decided that it might be good for him to have siblings in case something were to happen to Heidi and I, or obviously we're going to go probably, hopefully before he does. So helping him, just have a little solid foundation of a family, at least extended family would be good. This time it wasn't very lucky. We went through 2 frozen cycles. So we went frozen cycle, fresh cycle, frozen cycle, nothing. Finally, we decided one last fresh cycle, we would give it a go. And we ended up with our twins on that fresh cycle. So happy to, I guess I should say, so our first pregnancy, we had 12 embryos. We put 2 in. So we had, that's the 10 frozen. So that that's the frozen cycle. So in case people are out there that don't know the difference between a fresh cycle and a frozen cycle. But last fresh cycle, our last attempt, we decided to go with Landon and Millie, basically. So it was fun. It was a journey. It was a long time, a lot of money, a lot of time thinking about what this is going to be and how this will affect us as a family. But so that's kind of how we all came to our decisions to have kids. However, obviously, we are still all dealing with CF. We have everything that goes along with it. We still have our pills and our antibiotics, and we still all have to do multiple treatments a day while we're still raising these kids. And so the question kind of becomes, how do we inform or educate kids, our own kids, about what we're doing and what CF is, and how do we get them involved, if we get them involved at all? So for me, we decided very much to bring our oldest, Carter, which so my twins were born when he was almost 8. So he was an only child for most of his life, for the first 8 years. So for a long time, it was just us and him. And so what we did is when he was old enough, 2, 3, kind of that age range where he was paying attention and doing stuff. So we would sit together and I would wear my vest. We would watch various TV shows. We learned to love Phineas and Ferb. If you don't watch that show with your kids, it's fantastic. We'd watch cartoons together, or we'd play our PlayStation 2, because that's how old I am. I still remember the original PlayStation, and it had the 1 and 2. And we would just make it as very natural and normal as we possibly can in our lives. So after dinner, we would play for a little bit, and it would be treatment time. We'd sit down, watch TV, do nebulizers. And the cool thing is that it just became a part of what we did. Carter would try on the vest. When Carter's friends would come over, they would try on the vest. In fact, the funny thing is that at Carter's very first sleepover, and this is when my wife and I were family teachers at Boys Town, so it was a very trusted community. We had another family teaching couple that our boys were the same age. It was perfect. We were close. So we'd spend the night down there a lot. And the very first time he went down there to spend the night, he asked his friend Santiago, he said, "Santiago, when does your dad do treatments?" Because he just thought it was just so normal that I did that. And so then we had to explain to him later that not everybody dads does this. And so it was just kind of a fun story that we could tell him. We did the same thing when the kids came along. They would hang out with me. We'd watch shows. We would do vests. They would try them on, all that fun stuff. But the cool thing is that transition then, as Carter was getting older, like 11 and 12, the kids would go to bed, and then Carter and I would do treatments later together. And don't judge me because he was 11 or 12, maybe 13. But we would sit down and we'd watch The Office together. And even just still to this day, he and I will go back and forth with quotes, and we'll bring up various segments of that show, just kind of as something that we do together. My wife will get annoyed, but it's just kind of one of the things that we've always had together. Nicole, I have a question for you. Ernie is still young. So what do you do? How do you get involved with your CF?
Yeah, I am the lucky one of the group here with having the youngest one, who is currently in his Johnny Knoxville stage of life. So it's been real fun. Ernie is probably the easiest kid ever, which helps. But also, I do not shy away from him with sharing everything from the bathroom talks to medications. He goes with me to clinic at least twice a year. I do need to have some time where I actually can comprehend what my clinic doctors are saying to me. And it's hard to do that when he's there. But when he goes, like during PFTs, like even when I'm sitting in that big, lovely glass box where they put you in every now and then, he screams at the top of his lungs, "Mommy, blah, 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 blah." And he thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. And then he has to walk out with the nose clips on his nose, and he gets to take home the PFT mouthpiece that usually, grossly enough, ends up on the floor at least twice and still goes back in his mouth because kids are gross. But but with that, he is awesome for the sole purpose of, I think I shock the doctors anytime he ever needs a nebulizer with going to like pediatric urgent care because he is in daycare. And RSV, COVID, all the fun stuff. They're like, he's going to need a nebulizer. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And they're like, you seem very lackadaisy. I'm like, he knows how to do it. And they're like, they don't ever really actually believe me. And he knows how to turn it on. He puts it right up to his face, breathes in the medicine, and the shock on their faces is priceless. Like, I think I definitely enjoy this more than I should. Then when they do like the pulse ox, they're like, we're going to put this on your finger, buddy. He goes, okay. And just holds out his finger. So he's so good with being like, yeah, I know. This is what we do. This is normal. We have 3 bathrooms in our house. So mommy has her bathroom. He has his. Daddy has his. So if I'm having a bad CF tummy day, he's very good with understanding that, oh, mommy's tummy hurts. It's definitely a little difficult sometimes because he doesn't understand that I do have my good days and my bad days. But when I'm doing my medications, I don't push him away. I mean, I don't let him handle the pills because, no, I don't trust him. But I do tell him, like, okay, this is mommy's medicine for my tummy. This is called Plan. And this one's my multivitamin, just like your gummy vitamins. It's the same thing. So I try to explain it, and I try not to dumb it down too much for him, just because I do want him to be like a little bit more knowledgeable with it. Today, I dropped him off to my mother-in-law, and he showed up with a puke bucket because he kept saying he was going to throw up. And my mother-in-law's like, "You filled in the bucket?" I'm like, "He says he's going to puke." And he said, "Mom, give me a bucket." And I was like, "Hey, he's 3. I know adults that don't do this." So I was like, parenting win. So just really being opening with him and not shying away from any of that. But Annette, what about you and your daughter?
Well, I definitely feel like I need a little bit of time to myself to unpack during the day and relax. And sometimes I'm doing that with treatment. But I like to set up a routine so that everyone knows, unless it's an emergency, don't bother mommy. Just give me my space a couple of times during the day. It's necessary. I definitely agree with you guys to make sure that the kids feel comfortable. My partner feels comfortable with me doing treatments, but also to know that I'm not available, sometimes. There'll be a limit to what I can do for the day because sometimes those things really can wipe me out. There's times I share that time playing games with my daughter. We do the video games too. We watch movies while I'm doing the nebulizers of the vest sometimes. I've always invited family to my appointments. My daughter's been coming with me to appointments since she was like 1. She's seen me doing everything from PFTs to looking like a porcupine with acupuncture needles. I always want to make sure that the family stays informed so they kind of know, where I'm at, what to expect. So it's not misunderstood or they know why I'm like, maybe can't hang out at the park and run around. I'm just going to watch today because mommy had like a rough treatment today or the PFT was not so great. So going to just take a chill pill. But it's also like understood that's the necessary part of life in order for us to live life to our fullest, in order for me to, take that trip and go on the roller coaster. There's going to be days where it's just, we're going to just chill, watch mommy, do her, treatments and watch a movie. Maybe tomorrow we take it to the wind, go skydiving or something. I love it how each of us share these things in different ways with our kids and dealing with CF. When it comes to like the hospitalizations, whether they're short term or long term, I want to know, guys, how do you handle childcare and the responsibilities that need to be taken care of at home? I can pretty much kind of give you an idea of what it's like for me. Like I said before, just like when I was pregnant, I lean heavily on my support system. I have to make those calls to friends and family like, hey, I need a babysitter. I need to like take a couple of days off. I'll be in the hospital, or I have a sinus surgery. I may need someone to kind of pick up, drop off, be there for me when I get home, to kind of like have the ice packs ready and make sure that my space is clear to just kind of go straight to the bed and just check out. And that's why I like to keep, my family informed so they know it's kind of coming. A lot of times with us, it's a roller coaster. We might get thrown off guard, but when I can, I will let them know like, hey, I feel something's coming. Just, giving you a heads up. I might need, someone to be able to hop on over, maybe handle the dishes for me, because like I'm just having one of those flare-ups right now. And it's really helpful too, because I have a responsibility of taking care of an elderly relative, and I don't put that on my extended family or my friends. So I'm trying to always make sure I'm leaving enough time and, space to make sure I call a caretaker for that person. And then I have them to watch my daughter. So for me, it's paramount to have my village and make sure that they're all informed. How about you, Carolyn?
Yeah. So I hear a lot of us talking about communication, having that support system. And I also find it's really curious, like what's normal for us, what's normal for our kids is just what's normal. So what's going on in somebody else's house is just normal for them too. So I think that's important for me to always remember, especially when I feel guilty not being able to be with my children, or guilty about having to take time away or asking for that space. And I love, Annette, how you lean on your support system, and you seem really highly organized and really paying attention to the things that you need, which is awesome. I do know there's not like any one right way to do this. So, I lived for many years with a long sense of denial about the impact CF had on my body, which meant that I was prioritizing my children and my work over my health, to be honest. Unfortunately, in my late 40s, or maybe it's actually fortunate, but unfortunately for me in the moment, in my late 40s, after my kids were born, my lack of attention it contributed to a decline in my health, and I had a lot of hospital stays. I say fortunately because it kind of woke me up to the reality of having to be a better balance with what I needed to be doing. But one of the things that it was not easy, because you're wanting to be with your kids and you're wanting to take care of yourself and you're not wanting to burden anybody else. At least that's how I felt. And so it took a lot of time and a lot of strength and a lot of communication to navigate. But it definitely forced Robert and I to get better at asking for what we needed and expecting rather than expecting other to be mind readers. And, I'm a fiercely independent person, and it's hard for me to ask for help. So a friend of mine gave me a great lesson. She said, Carolyn, stop fussing. It's my turn to help you. It's not your job right now. Your job is to take care of yourself. And I know when you're well, that you will give back in turn. So it really taught me that it's a gift to receive as much as it is a gift to give. So that helped me in that space. And the other thing that was really important to me is that Robert and I were very intentional about deciding to have children and how we would teach them about CF. So we needed to be honest while at the same time creating a sense of security, especially when they're younger, right? Our little guys really need to know that we have a safe place and home is a safe place for them. So when I was younger and I had to go when the children were younger and I had to go into the hospital, we would call it, I'm going to the CF spa versus to the hospital. But we did that in order to teach them that the hospital is a place for when people are sick, they go take care of themselves and get better. That was the intention behind that. The other thing that we would do, because for a clean out, I'd typically go in for 2 weeks. So that first week, Robert would take the children and visit grandparents, whether that was New Jersey or Alabama, or even just my parents down the street, and stay with them. So they kind of had a break and a vacation, and they got to spend time with them. So we chose to do that because it occupied the children and they weren't focusing on my absence. And also I was completely exhausted and I did not want visitors at the hospital. It gave me a time to really genuinely rest and take care of my body. And it also gave Robert the support because he had others to help him, because he then turned into the default parent and he had to navigate getting the kids to and from school, the meal prep, maintaining his work, handling bedtimes, and also providing emotional support to the children as well as to myself because he was torn between those things. But we really decided that as long as I was healthy to be my own self-advocate in the hospital, then he would maintain the family side and I would take care of myself there. Another thing that we did was really prioritize listening to our kids and to remember that when they're little, they're not necessarily telling us that they're afraid with words, but it's through their behaviors. So we really watched that, and we would reach out to their teachers, let them know that I was in the hospital, ask them to communicate more with us if they saw the children struggling or acting out, and just ask them to give them extra hugs, to be that extended person that they might be missing. And they were we were very fortunate. All of our kids' teachers were open to having those kind of conversations. So then that second week in the hospital, Robert would bring them back every other day for about an hour and a half to maintain. Some days it was 10 minutes and it was time to go because 4 kids in a hospital room is a little bit overwhelming. So, and they would see, they'd see the nurses come check my vitals, do my respiratory treatments, my respiratory therapists. And then they'd do their best to listen when the doctors came. We would take astronaut rides up and down on the hospital bed, and then I'd order extra pudding for them. So when they came, so they had a snack. They took turns on the exercise bike. We flipped through the TV channels. So we really tried to make it fun, but also recognize and teach them that time is precious. And the other part that my body worked differently. And when somebody needs something, we show up for them in that space. And then if it taught them then if you need something, we will show up for you in that space at the same time. I will say that they had to grow up a little bit faster than their peers around these things, around these issues. But they certainly, I can see it in them today, that empathy and understanding of differences in people is something that is a gift that CF has brought to my children in that experience. I'm fortunate now after being able to take Trikafta in 2019. So my lungs have stayed more stable. And I have not had to be in the hospital. So hopefully that will continue. But at the same time, we're also, I'm being evaluated from a lung transplant. I'm not listed at this point, but we're just kind of starting that process because of my FEV1, my stats there. And so who knows what it will look like. We just have to kind of show up in that space when the time comes and navigate it together. And, I think that's an important part of whatever that we do. But at the same time, Chad, you've been through a lung transplant, so maybe we can talk offline after a while just to see how you navigated that. And I can't, I'm really curious as to what that meant for you.
Yeah, so I kind of have two sides of that because before the transplant, I would have your regular clean outs like everybody else does, and so for that time, hospital visits were, our hospital stays were. So I'm learning as I listen to you ladies talk about how much bigger a role you have had to play. So, I mean, I love being a dad and it's fantastic. It's my number one job title. I love it. But they still go to mom for most stuff, right? So hospital stays were always more stress on her than it were on me. I'd be in the hospital hanging out, getting taken care of 24/7. Anytime I need something, I push a button. She's here running appointments. She's running all the errands. She's cooking all the time. I mean, she's having to manage the entire house by herself. And then on top of that, because I'm selfish sometimes and I want to make sure I get to see my kids, she's also then packing them up and bringing them down. So Hospital stays before the transplant were fun for me because she brought him down and she was exhausted. So we would play cards, we'd play board games. They're, they were 3, 4. But the nurses loved it when they visited. So it was just fun stuff like that. I got my transplant in 2016. My twins were, I believe, 5, maybe 6. And it was way different because I live in Omaha. At the time of my start of my transplant evaluation, Omaha was not doing transplants. So I actually listed with Minnesota, Minneapolis, not Mayo. And so it was a 6-hour drive. So I lived in Minnesota. I lived here at home until my lungs were available. Thankfully, I didn't get so sick that I had to go stay at the transplant center. But so I got the call, went up there, and then my kids came up before the transplant. Heidi, her mom, my mom and dad, my siblings, everybody kind of helped out. That was true village type thing. Everybody was helping with everything. They went home. I stayed there for 9 months. Or sorry, 9 months, thankfully. I was supposed to stay there for 90 days. They visited me only one time because with the timing of everything, school was starting. And so they got to come visit me over Labor Day weekend is all. And so that was different. That was me just hanging out at our condo that I had to rent, visiting as much as we could. It was state fair time. And if you've never been to Minnesota State Fair, it's allegedly one of the best. So we were able to do that. But really, pre-transplant, it was all about finding help. So our church was fantastic. They were making us meals for Heidi and the kids to eat before they came up to visit us. We had friends coordinating everything so that Heidi could just focus on, taking care of what the kids need. Everybody else was lining up the meals, lining up lawn mowing, things like that, snow shoveling when we was in the hospital in the wintertime. So it's just super important for us, at least it was, and I've heard it from all of you guys too. We're not in this alone. CF, as we all know, is a super isolating disease, but we don't get to interact with each other, but thankfully we can interact with other people. And that's really what it comes down to. So regardless of what we're doing as a CF community, learning to lean into our support systems, no matter what that looks like, is super key. So we have CF, we have to put our lungs first. We have to try to put our health first. But then when we become spouses, and we try to keep our spouses on that list too. And then when we become parents, now we're trying to keep our parents first, our kids first. Yeah. Sorry for me to take my transplant meds. So we're kids first, health first, spouse first. That's a lot of first. So we can't do it all. So I'm curious, how do you guys find balance in all of this? How do you guys try not to lose your identity? For me, the biggest kind of wake-up call to that came when in January of 2016, when I was told I have to be put on the transplant list, I was told I can no longer work. My full-time job became fighting CF. And so the main breadwinner of the house, a huge curveball, not just for me, but for my family. How are we going to pay our mortgage, eat, all that fun stuff? So thankfully, our community came to the rescue, kind of. My wife was good at cleaning, and I have a house that shows that. And so people started asking her to help come clean their house once a week or whatever it was. So she would get the kids off to school. I would head downstairs to do treatments, and she would leave and go clean houses. Or she would go help people organize garages or whatnot. Basically, anything that they thought Heidi could help them with, they were asking her to do that, and then they were compensating her for her time. And so it was just a super big help, and that was the way our community really lended in and helped. But it still totally negatively affected my identity because now I was the stay-at-home sick dad who couldn't really help around the house, who couldn't really go out and earn a living. So it was just frustrating at times. Annette, I'm curious, how do you remain you and not lose your sense of identity while you're doing your mom stuff and your CF stuff and everything else that goes with that?
Well, definitely having CF has caused us to experience a lot of loss in my family with the miscarriages, then the loss of being able to work. So many things when it comes to your emotional and physical health when you have these setbacks. And I feel like, similar to you, the financial setback is major because our disease is pretty expensive. And just the food alone. It's extremely important, I believe, for us to seek therapy and counseling. And you may need to consider more than one type of specialist to address different matters, just like your care team. That can even include professionals like an acupuncturist or a yoga teacher. And it should be prioritized as much as your treatments because the self-care for your mind has just as much effect as the care you're giving for your physical body. I think sometimes we forget we're doing so much it feels normal, but it's not normal in general. Individually, we come with our own personalities, our wants, our needs, and beliefs, and we work through that daily. Then there's the added layer of the parenting, the partnerships, the work, and other external relationships. Then CF as another layer. Between our care teams, I don't think we talk enough either about the long-term effect of some of the medications on our mental health. And that's, again, another layer added. And sometimes we just don't give ourselves enough grace when we think about all of these things to kind of give ease and deal with the pressure of managing it all day to day. Because my average day is getting up early, doing about an hour or two of treatments and feeling exhausted while everyone is asleep. I'm still making the meals and prepping things so everyone is basically ready when they get up. I tend to my fur baby, and I'm then helping to get my daughter out to school or prepping her bags. Then I'm doing some disinfecting after I get back. Then I'll start my work. And in between that, I'll be doing some food prep maybe. Before I know it, my day is just about over and I'm rounding it out to go pick her up, come back home, help with homework, maybe squeeze a little something for myself in between that. If I didn't have any appointments today, so I might have the energy to squeeze something in, after which I'm running on fumes by 6 and I'm happy to go to bed by 8. And if your day is anything like mine, it's not normal. You need a break from the normal. And you have to do that from time to time. And I feel like those things we give ourselves when it comes to like therapy and seeking that counseling is that little breakaway if we can't get it through some other form. Just thinking about it. My head is, Carolyn, how are you managing all of this with your work and life balance?
I'm like a fruit fly in here. So, well, then, Nicole, I'm listening to you and I'm like, man, I sound exhausted. That sounds exhausting. It's like you, I've had to find some things too. So like I see a therapist every other week. I do acupuncture, massage therapy sometimes. Nicole, I was laughing when you were talking about your bathroom, right? With CF issues. Honestly, I hide in the bathroom quite a bit.
That's a real thing. I don't want
my family to know that.
That's a real thing, except our one bathroom has a shared closet, so Ernie just pushes the laundry basket and crawls through. So
Nice.
I can't escape.
I know there was that YouTube video of that mom hiding in the cabinet as her kids are all under. Yeah. So I don't do that all the time, but I won't pretend that I don't do that. So, I definitely feel drained at the end of the day as well. It took me a lot of time to understand my role as a woman and a mother with CF. I really try to comply with my treatments and having that structure, like in my head, I know that is the best way to do it. I want to be compliant with my medical care team, my healthcare team. And it's really difficult for me. So I had to think about what's the best way to take care of myself and my family. So with having ADHD and that executive functioning stuff that comes in, and I love, Chad, hearing that alarm on your phone because I've got those too. But it was clashing, you know, when you think about do this, that checklist for me, that's just not the way that I work. We're really free flowing in our nature. And so I had to kind of give up and accept and give myself grace to be part of my system to help me, to force me to acknowledge that difference. There's a difference between can't and won't. It's not that I won't do it. It's just like the way it was structured, I couldn't do it. And so that taught me that I need to really collaborate with my CF team to find a way where we can do this creatively that works for me, and be thinking about the way I'm doing my airway clearance might look different, or balancing, you know, what I need with the natural tendencies. So that's important. The other piece for me is my identity beyond being a mom and beyond being someone with CF. So I'm passionate about my professional identity. I care deeply about education. I also know I overextend. So we are always looking at, okay, you know, sometimes my CF doctors have to say, you cannot go to work today. You have to stay home. And that happened earlier this week. And so I'm getting better at compliance and listening to them. Also too, the other piece too is like one of the huge things that happened for our family was that balancing all of the things that we're doing, Robert and I had to decide how is this going to look in our family. So, you know, moms do a ton of things like domestic work, which I hate, like cooking, cleaning, all of that stuff. I am not good at it. But we are typically doing those things, and we're the family nurturers, social organizers, educators, health managers, you know, on and on and on and on. So I was laughing, Chad, earlier because you said moms have to do a lot. And there was one day I heard the word mom once too many times on top of my husband, who criticized how I had done the laundry, which I still don't understand why he was upset about that. And I said, like, that's it. I am no longer in charge of the wash. That's Dad's job. And he's been doing the wash ever since. So I've been wash free for 7 years. Woo!
Nice.
I'm going to talk to my husband, please.
Yeah. It was just one of those moments. But the real cool part about it, and really Robert's much better. He'd be a much better stay-at-home parent because of the way his brain works. But we now hear mom and dad evenly. I mean, it changed the way the dynamics were happening in the household. And the most important thing for me is now my children turn to my husband for that nurturing. They turn to him. Is my laundry done? Where do I have lunch? It's not all on me to kind of do those things. So it's definitely more balanced. And I had to let him do it. Like it wasn't that he wasn't willing. I had to let go of the control that I thought I had to be doing in order for him to walk into that space. So it was really fortunate that we were both willing to do that and work through those hard things, because that's not always the case for everybody. But we are definitely stronger as a couple since that happened. Our children have a more balanced relationship with both of us. And they've also taken on more responsibilities too. They're realizing it's not just mom's job, it's our job. So that's kind of how we have worked through some of those things. The other part too is I'm still, every year, I decide whether I need to be going back to work next year or not. So right now I'm in that time, you know, what will I be doing next year? You know, we have to constantly, like all of you, navigate change and expect what is expected for us. Like what works best for my family may not work best for anybody else's family. But I have to say, if this works for us, this is the way we're going to go with it, because that's what's going to make our days easier. And that's something that has certainly been important. So, and once I accepted that, things became a lot more manageable. So I feel like we're in a good space right now. I say I'm in that sweet spot. But my daughter does go off to college next year. So that might be a panel for next year. But
it's not easy.
Okay.
Be prepared.
Okay. So, you know, it's interesting to watch from when they were babies and now as they're moving into more of that kind of adult world. So Nicole, I'm wondering, because Ernie is small, but he's about 2 or 3. How does that look like for you?
Ernie's 3, and I did a lot of volunteer work before Ernie. It's a whole different segue there. But I used to volunteer for pit bulls. We had over 30 dogs in 8 years. I was a volunteer EMT for over 15 years. I taught handicapped kids ice skiing for over 20 years. I work a full-time job at a local car dealership for about 40 to 45 hours a week, and a part-time job too. And yeah, that was a lot. And now we just do a couple of other things, but we're involved with the Coast Guard because my husband's in that. And we just take Ernie everywhere with us and tell him that if it wasn't for people like us to help, there's no one to help us when we need it. So just being, once again, open with them and things like that, but honest and all of the good things. But I cannot thank you guys enough for being extremely vulnerable over sharing all of our perspectives and everything, because I know we're all a little bit different here, and we're all parents, and that's a huge, huge step. I love to now open up questions to the audience. So I know there's been some questions that have been floating on through. So I'm going to start asking some of them, and my panelists here, whoever you would want to answer, go right ahead. The first one I'd like to ask is, do you find it's different advocating for your kids than advocating for yourself? Does anyone want to step in? If not, I definitely have an answer for this one.
Why don't you go, Nicole?
Yeah.
This is going to sound really weird. I find it very, calming that I have so many health problems because of having CF, rheumatoid arthritis, scoliosis. I have a severe gluten allergy that affects my skin, CF-related diabetes, and a beginning stage of glaucoma. Like, you name it, the list just goes on and on. But because I've always been such a good advocate for myself and being so open for myself, I know when to tell the doctors, like, no, we're going to do this. Like, I'm very good with that way. Also, with him going to daycare, they're amazing, but they're also like, well, kid might be sick, so you might want to keep him. I'm like, no, he can go. He needs to build his immunity. And if I'm not dying yet because of something that he's bringing home from daycare, I'm doing pretty darn good, because it's like a cesspool of germs. But I think with us always having to be such true advocates for ourselves with our medical backgrounds, we're like one of the top tier advocates for our kids. Like, we know when to tell, like, basically call something and just stand up for them, because we've had to stand up for our health and our livelihood all these years. So anyone else have a different answer?
I don't think so.
The only thing I would add to that is I do think that we're modeling advocacy all the time. And so helping our children seeing that, I think, is really building those self-advocacy skills for them too. So I really try to do the best that I can to allow them to take care of as many issues as they can, being that person in the background. Yeah, to say, I've got you here, and I'll move in if I need to. That's been an experience that I've had or witnessed with my children.
No, I agree. Next question. How do you keep your own medical PTSD from making it not so overpowering and such as a worrying parent?
That's a great question. Yeah.
Anyone have an answer for that one?
I really feel like we've been there and done that so much. A lot of the times, I'm actually so much more hands-off than I thought I would be. I'm just like, it's just that, or it's just this. I got something for that. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it really doesn't hit me like that. Yeah,
I think having so many different medical things that with CF, because I don't think, does any of us just have CF, or do we all have the other things that go with it? Like,
it's a list. We all have a list.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost like a comedy act of like, oh yeah, it's every 2 years I'm expected something. So what is it this year? Like, it's fine. So no, I'd have to agree with that. I think we just our skin's thicker, and we're just really good at owning our illness.
I do think too, like, I agree 100%. Like, there's kind of that sense of humor that comes in, with having chronic illness with stuff like CF. And I also think at least for me, like, even recognizing that I might have some PTSD related to my worries, like, I have to be really thoughtful that I don't diminish my children's fears, because they haven't lived what I've lived, So when I put in my continuous glucose monitor and they're watching that, that go into my body, they're like, oh my gosh. And I forget that sometimes. So I find it the opposite, that for me, the PTSD doesn't cause me to be over anxious. For me, it causes me to be less aware of what they might be feeling. So I think it's just kind of that self-awareness, right? So if you're feeling, excuse me, like that PTSD is causing you to feel a huge sense of worry, acknowledging that and kind of working through that, or the opposite, right? Just knowing what it is that you need and reaching out to other people, I think is also key, because like talking to all of you is like, oh, okay, what I'm feeling is kind of normal, or maybe that isn't. So that constant conversation and self-reflection for me has been important.
Definitely seeking the help with like therapists and counselors has helped a lot with that as well. For Chad and Carolyn, you guys have older kids. I don't know if Annette, if you've had this talk, but have any of you guys talked with your kids about the health decline at all and the possibilities that might come with that?
Yes, 100%. So, during my sickest time, right before my transplant, my FEV1 was hovering around 18 to 21 on any given day. And so it was real. Like for the first time probably ever, I felt the burden of like, I'm dying and my kids are going to be here alone. I'd already talked to Carter about it a lot. He understood it, but the weird thing is that when I got put on the list for the transplant, somewhere Carter heard that means I have 1 year left to live. Once that my transplant was only going to add 1 year of life to me. And so that was a hard, like he called me up one time when I was up in Minnesota and he was away at a church camp for the weekend. And thankfully one of the elders was up there with him and he just broke down, just lost it. So they didn't have cell phones because they weren't allowed them. But Jamie, our friend who was there with them, pulled him aside. We called and we chatted. We had a great conversation. So just when that time comes for you, Nicole, and I don't know, Annette, if you've had that yet, be as transparent as possible as you feel comfortable being. Be there to answer any kind of questions, and make sure that when they leave that conversation, that they are not A, living in fear. That's a super big thing. And B, that they know like they have the information and they understood what you meant. And so that would be my advice for that.
I appreciate that.
It's not easy, and there's not a right answer. Like yes, by the age 12, it's not a number. It's a total situational thing. And so you guys know your kids best. You'll know when that moment comes and what it's going to look. You have no idea what it's going to look like or how it's going to go, but when it presents itself, you'll recognize it, I think. Carolyn, any additional thoughts or different thoughts?
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you shared for sure. One thing that we have always done in our family is we talk about death as part of life, right? So it's the same thing. We talk about drugs from the time my kids it's just a conversation that happens. And so one of the things that I really have done with my children is just emphasize there's several good books out there too, but it's like that string, that silver string. And so as the mom, I'm like, when you were inside of me, we were connected by the umbilical cord. So I'm telling them all this. And I said, that string never, ever goes away. It stretches and it expands. And this is my belief system about death. So even when Sophie goes to college, we are still connected. Even if I am not present physically here, we are still connected. And that's been a conversation from the beginning of my children's lives. And it kind of, I hope, that's my intention, is to like give them a sense of understanding that who we are as people, who we are as family will exist beyond the moment. Now, I have not been in this situation where we're going to have different conversations if I go into lung transplant or there's that decline. And, Nicole, you talked about all your animals and we've had many, many animals. We've had our dogs, There's been some tragedies with chickens
Yeah.
in our house.
We just put down our cat a couple months ago, and Ernie goes, "Where's my Sophie?" He can't say Sophie. But he's also been to a couple funerals already. And where's my papa? And I'm like, Papa's in heaven. And well, why? I wanted to go there. So like, just once again, the transparency, I think, is definitely, I mean, we're honest. If we can't be honest with ourselves, how are we supposed to be honest with our kids?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And also too, we also have a counselor. We have a family counselor ready. We're not waiting till the crisis, because then it'll be 9 months to get in. We have somebody we've already established to kind of help us navigate through. So those are some of the ways that we've talked about death and the realities of CF.
No, I love those answers. Those are great. This is definitely, I'm not going to lie, I'm not looking forward to this stage in being a parent, but teenagerhood. Chad, Carolyn, what do you guys do? What is, like, how do you handle this? What do I need to prep myself for?
Yes.
And Annette, like, what do we got to do?
Help
I got the boy, she's got the girl. Give us all of the details.
Keep them off social media as long as you
possibly can. That is the word.
Check.
I don't think Ernie could turn on the TV if he has to right now. So I feel like that's a pretty good, like, parenting win.
For sure.
Yeah.
So Carter's 21, going to be 22. Recently, we have come to the tragic realization that he is no longer going to live at home again. Summers are done. We are down to a 4-person household. Super hard navigating. So I'll brag on Carter for just 1 second. I promise. He is he's a CF advocate. He's marched on the Hill. He was part of Teen Advocacy Day. He has embraced the CF community as if it was his own, and he loves doing, like, he was just named Volunteer of the Year by our local chapter for the city for Lincoln. So he does everything he can to stay involved with the CF Foundation. But as far as like when he was a teenager, he like this is what I do for a living. I talk to parents who are in crisis, who don't know what to do with their various kids. And I feel like I am a really good advice giver on this, but when it comes to my own kids, I'm horrible, right? It's just so different. My daughter right now is 14 and she's in the middle of 8th grade, junior high. It's every other day there's a new girl who's mad at her, or she's mad at, or they're talking about each other. And so my best advice to managing the teenage years is get help, provide counselors. That's going to help so much. I'm going to also go ahead and promote yourlifeyourvoice.org is a fantastic website for these kids. It's ylyv.org. It's a teen website where I work at. We run that. There's articles on how kids can navigate stuff. The cool thing is there's also an opportunity to reach out and talk to a crisis counselor through text message on that website. So get help, because it's not easy, and plant people in their lives. And one of the best things we did was we planted people in their lives for them. My daughter, Millie, has a really good relationship with one of my wife's best friends, Karen. They have one-on-one dates periodically just to check in on things. She can tell Karen stuff perhaps that she doesn't want to talk to mom about, but we also have that other relationship. She's plugged into her youth group, so her youth worker gal, whatever, youth group leader, whatever, she checks in with her. Same thing with Landon, he's got just a bunch of friends with great parents that we know and love, and they check in on him all. I mean, we just have that great community. So I do truly believe when it comes to raising teenagers, the best thing as parents can do is get help with it. And it's not easy. It's probably one of the hardest jobs out there. And so, Carolyn, you've got a senior in high school. Yeah.
And my 14-year-olds are coming into high school too. Yes. So we're working into that. I really think for me, what I've done with Sophie is just try to keep that line of communication open. And one of the best things, one of my her teacher told me once, she said, when your child comes to you, especially in adolescence, and they're coming to you with something, the first thing to ask is, am I here to fix it, or am I here to listen?
Yep.
And I ask that every single time, especially when she's feeling stressed. I'm like, Are you asking me for help? Or are you asking me to listen? And so if she asks me to listen, that's all I'm doing. I'm just
By the way,
listening.
that's also great for husbands when your wives are talking to you. That's a great first question. Do you want support or do you want a solution?
Yes, that would be really helpful. I agree.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That was good.
Right? Because then you know what you're coming into.
Right.
Now, she may tell me something when she says, I just want you to listen. And then she's telling me something and my school counselor brain's going off and my mama brain's going off. And I'm like, I've got to tell somebody that I've got to do something.
Yeah.
So, but I don't tell her that in that moment.
Right.
I listen. And then it might even come back to her the next day and say, you really told me something that is, so that's how I've navigated some of these things. And I also agree, Chad, I make sure that my children are involved in an activity outside of their school community, because the school community is intense, right?
Yes.
And so you can how many of us get tired of each other, and even in our same household? I need to make sure I have friends outside of Robert. So I make sure they have a group. So my boys, they're in a rowing club. So they are on crew team, and that's separate than their school. So that's a strategy that we've used too. So they have avenues to get away from some of that drama. And also too, it's a balance, like, keep them away as long as possible as you can from social media, but also integrate it in and support them in that space. Those are the things that we've done. I've been fortunate so far. Sophie, like I said, remember, she's my easy one. But I'm buckling up for this next 4 years as the boys move in, because it will be different, I'm sure.
It's very, very different. I can attest to that for sure. Even with having a boy and a girl in the same grade, the drama is just so, like, if it's 100 for Millie, it's like -10 for Landon, and that never changes. It's like that, it doesn't flip. So it's way different. But I think you'll find it a lot of fun with the boys in high school. I really do.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's going to be entertaining. Before I ask one more question, would any of you guys want to share a picture of your kids so people can see what we're talking about or who we're talking about? Because this is Ernie. I don't know if you can see it very well.
I love it.
Safe face.
So I'm a bad dad. I don't have any pictures on my phone, so I made my wife bring me down a photo.
That's okay. Oh, that works. Oh, I like it. It looks good.
So there they are. Yeah, that's fun.
Here's my crew.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
There we go.
That looks good.
Here's Olivia. Okay, maybe if I bring my head closer. No, that didn't work.
But we could always, like,
really
be
gave it a
friends on
shot.
Facebook and just stalk each other or something like that. But
See you there.
I'd love to hear a memorable or fun story with being a parent and having CF. Can you guys maybe share one that comes to the top of your mind at all? I actually, mine isn't with Ernie. When I mentioned that I had my sister and our niece move in with us, Gabby is my niece. She's 10. Not going to lie, we refer to her as the spawn of Satan, but she's my doodle bug. Very feisty, very, very feisty. And she loved doing videos with me to raise money for CF and the Great Strides Walk. So we have a sledding hill here in Buffalo, New York called Chestnut Ridge Park. And we sat at the top of the hill and she goes, okay, everybody, we're going to scream and it's going to be for CF. So you got to do it loud because my aunt really can't. And there was so much sash. I think she was like 6 years old. And we screamed. I videotaped this whole entire time going down the hill. I was slightly worried that I was going to drop my phone and destroy it. But the amount of laughter, I loved that. And my Gab used to come with me to clinics too every now and then. But I always loved our videos together. And I can't wait to do that with Ernie as well. But I have a few videos with Gabby. Oh, yeah. But what about you guys? Anything?
Well, I recently, maybe last year, went camping for the first time. And it was actually invited by another lady that I met at a family con a few years back. And we made sure we had ample distance. But it was just funny that kids were running around. We just kind of watching them. We can't keep up with them. They're having a ball. The sun goes down. Everyone's live and popping. We're laid out, just knocked out. We just couldn't hang. And it's like all the kids are like making fun of us. And I'm feeling like the oldest person there. I don't know if I was, but I was definitely like the granny, sleep in the couch, just gone.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure those days are definitely coming to me.
Yeah. So I don't know if I want to share this, but why not? We all understand CF. So one of the things that I had to, the 11-year-old humor, potty humor, like we talk about every digestive
Oh yeah.
thing all the time. And so it's just a running joke in our family, and nobody is hesitant about talking about any of those digestive issues. But I did have to remind my children there is no potty talk outside of the household, right? Because
I have to start that rule.
Exactly.
I need to implement that rule because right now Ernie is like, "Mommy, my poop is rocks," and I'm like, "We're next to somebody in Longhorn. Be quiet! Like, what are we doing? No one else needs to know this."
Yep.
The best.
Especially at his age, right? It's all about that.
And of course, there's no
Yeah.
volume control. It's just the loudest you can be.
That's funny.
Chad, what about you? Anything?
So probably the coolest thing that we ever got to do and was post-transplant. My folks took all of us out for a week-long Disney trip, and just being with them in that environment was great. I'd say if I one story that kind of comes to mind is like, and this is a little bit earlier, the day that I got home from Minnesota, it was 2 days before my twins' birthday. And so everything was kind of getting ready for bed. And as per our routine, that's when I go downstairs and do treatment. So everybody starts getting ready for bed. And I just look at everybody and say, all right, well, I'm going to head down now and go do treatments. And they're like, okay, well, we'll see you. Good night. Give you hugs, all this kind of stuff. And I let them think about it. And then they just started walking up the stairs and said, guys, I don't have to do treatments anymore. I thought that was the greatest thing. I got to go up with them and we put them to bed together for the first time in forever. And it was just a great, fun thing that we got to do. And it just never dawned on them up until that point that I was done with treatments. So I hope my team's not on here, but we'll see. Yeah, it was great.
It's been a very long time.
Yeah.
I actually stopped because I was breastfeeding, so I couldn't do my vest while breastfeeding because I'll leave it at that. And yeah, so it was a lot, but it was, I love it. I can't wait for all the fun stories to come. But I do believe that we are just about out of time. I cannot thank you guys enough for speaking and sharing everything. I am so happy to have met you guys and create this new friendship. And I look forward to all the years to come with this. But thank you to all of our speakers for sharing everything and knowledge and insight. And thank you to everyone who attended and your attention, your questions, and you just being here and listening to us. We truly, truly appreciate it. But before we go, please take some time filling out the satisfactions question under the poll tab on the right-hand side of your screen. We'd really like to know how you felt about today's conversation. And we are very excited now to hear a message from Leah Schwanke, the 2024 BreatheCon chair, with a closing message. Following that will be the option for a virtual happy hour. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. We will definitely see you at the next session and look forward to all the years to come. Thank you guys very much.